announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs, the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So Jamin Davis' season is done. He will have season-ending shoulder surgery. And this is the second year in a row that he has not finished the season. And granted, last season there was no reason to finish the season after week 17. Once we lost to Cleveland, there was nothing on the line in week 18, so forth and so forth. Same thing with this season. He suffered an injury, apparently, to his shoulder against the Miami Dolphins prior to the bye. And that's going to require surgery. Hence, his season has met its conclusion. So, with that news, I ask you the question, are you interested in picking up Jamin Davis's fifth-year option? Remember, after 3 years of service, every first-round pick has a decision to be made as to whether the team that drafted them wants to pick up their fifth-year option. Jamin Davis has now played 3 full years with the Commanders. Thus, they have a decision to make on him in the offseason. Let's take a look at his statistics from the first 3 seasons of his career, and then we'll get into the specifics of his fifth-year option and whether you are interested or not. So, remember, his rookie season was marred by Washington deciding that he was going to be a middle linebacker, which was a big mistake. We all knew he was a outside backer, primarily a weak side backer when he was drafted, yet they tried to make him into a middle linebacker. It was a failed experiment. As you can see, the numbers kind of bear that out in his rookie season. He struggled to pick up the defense. And by season's end, I think they had kind of figured out he's more of a weak side backer. It took them way too long to figure that out. But nonetheless, they got to that conclusion eventually. So he only started in 8 games his rookie season. But you can see the humongous jump in his second season once they figured out he was a weak side linebacker and let him play there and stay there. Now, it sucked that Cole Holcomb was there for the first half of the season, wasn't there on the back end, but that didn't stop Jamin Davis from having his best season to date of his career. As you can see, in 2022, his second year, he started 16 games. Or played in 16 games, started 15 of them. Did have 1 pass breakup, and he had 2 fumble recoveries in his second season. 3 sacks, 104 combined tackles, which is the most he's ever had in his career to date. He set pretty much career highs across the board, which isn't hard to do in your second season. But the significance there is those career highs are still, most of them are still career highs. Sans for the pass deflections, where he had 4 PBUs this year. He was, I feel like, in coverage a lot more this year. It felt like teams went out of their way to isolate Jamin Davis and go after him in coverage. And for the most part, he held up. Look, there were times where he got cooked and the quarterback just didn't make an accurate throw. There would have been a lot more. There would have been a lot more damage done to Jamin Davis's pass defense statistics had some of these quarterbacks been able to make accurate throws, but they haven't. A lot of them haven't made great throws down the sidelines to running backs. Jalen Hurts missed a wide open DeAndre Swift. Mac Jones missed a wide open Ramondre Stevenson. I can go on and on and on with the teams that didn't take advantage of Jamin Davis one-on-one down the field. Tried to, but didn't connect. Still, he also had the Falcons game, right, where he did a really good job, and he had the game-clinching pick. That was the first and his only pick to date at this point of his career. He's only 25, as you can see. Started all 13 games this season. The 1 interception, as I mentioned, from the Falcons game. 4 pass breakups, so that number took a huge uptick there. And I felt like he was in coverage a lot more this year than in past years. He also forced 2 fumbles, the first 2 fumbles of his career that he has forced. So he did some really good things in 2023. Also matched his career high in sacks with 3 once again. Now you see the dip in tackles, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was in coverage a lot more. But, that's nor here nor there. Tackles for loss, he had 8. In the previous season, he had 9. I thought he was more aggressive at the line of scrimmage, attacking the line of scrimmage, playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. I thought he was getting more and more comfortable in doing that. He had 5 QB hits in his second season, only 3 in his third season, so that took a little bit of dip. But I don't think he rushed the quarterback a whole hell of a lot either. I thought they rushed him a little bit more as a blitzer in his sophomore season, not so much in his third season in the league. But nonetheless, I thought Jamin Davis was solid this year. Is he a game changer? Probably not. Probably not. But I like the steady improvement and growth that I've seen from him. And they put him in some tough spots, man. I mean, they really put a lot of stress on Jamin Davis and what they were asking him to do in his defense week in and week out. A lot of times they were remember back in 2022, the first game of the season, they put Jamin Davis on the Jaguar slot receiver, Christian Kirk. And Kirk was cooking him in that game. Really, he was getting cooked by everybody. Travis Etienne was open for a touchdown on the first possession, and Trevor Lawrence just missed him, right? Jamin Davis, it was like second and like 18, and Christian Kirk ran a jerk route over the middle of the field and beat Jamin Davis, which you can't give up the inside because you have no help to the inside. He can go anywhere he wants but inside, and Jamin Davis let him inside. But it's a tough cover, right? Like, that's the kind of assignments they be giving Jamin Davis a lot of times. Like, hey, figure this shit out. But you got to cover whoever's in this slot. If it's a receiver, good luck, bro. If it's a tight end, you got him. If it's a running back, hey, we got confidence in you. Whatever the case may be, Davis has held up. Hasn't always been pretty, but it's been gritty, and most importantly, it's been mostly effective. So what says you? You've seen Jamin Davis for 3 years. You know what he's about. You see the steady growth, but I don't know how much better he can truly get. Like, I don't see superstar or even Pro Bowl player written all over Jamin Davis. I think this is who he is at his core. At his best, Jamin Davis, as he likes to say, is Jamin Davis, and he's going to play Jamin Davis football. Well, I think we've seen 3 years of Jamin Davis football. There's the third year, and the first 3 years, rather, of Jamin Davis football require you to give him a 5th year of Jamin Davis football. The tag on that is $13 million, fully guaranteed. If you love Jamin Davis, you pick up the 5th year option. If you're intrigued by Jamin Davis, I don't think you're going to pay him $13 million in 2 years, fully guaranteed. And it's hard for me to imagine the new regime coming in and saying, oh, man, we love this Jamin Davis kid. We're going to give him $13 million in his 5th and final year of his rookie contract. Yeah, let's do that. I don't see that happening. I think he plays out the string. Similar to Chase Young, I think they declined the 5th year option. He'll be on the final year of his rookie contract next year, and he'll have to prove it. And if he proves it and he plays well, then they decide to have him back, so be it. If not, he'll be, playing elsewhere in 2025, right? So we'll see what happens with Jamin Davis. What says you? You interested in a $13 million 5th year option on Jamin Davis? Have you seen enough good ball? Have you seen enough growth and progress from him to want to pick up the 5th year option? $13 million price tag on that 5th year option? Leave it down in the comment section. Jamin Davis out for the season with a shoulder injury. Had a really solid 3rd year with the Commanders. And now the decision will have to be made in the offseason. It won't be made by the people who drafted him, which is something that you have to take into consideration. The people that brought Jamin Davis here to play Jamin Davis football will not be here to make the decision as to whether to pick up his 5th year option or not, which probably tells you it's not going to happen. But I'm not asking you what you think they're going to do. We know that the likelihood is they won't pick up his 5th year option. I'm asking you, what would you do? Would you pick up Jamin Davis's 5th year option? So let's get to in other news. where it's pretty simple, cut and dry. Felt like we won over the weekend. We haven't had a victory Monday in quite some time. This feels like a victory Monday. Just off the strength of not playing and not having to watch and suffer through 3 hours of nauseating ball. Felt like a win for me all by itself. When you add into the fact of the different results and outcomes that came to be on Sunday that put Washington in an even better position to rise up the draft boards, if you will, I thought it was an outstanding Sunday. Nothing happened outside of Chicago beating Detroit. Nothing happened that surprised me. I told you guys Tampa was going to win more games. I told you New Orleans was going to win more games. Like, everything that I told you was going to happen, happened. I just didn't see Detroit losing to Chicago, but maybe I should have, because Chicago had those boys dead to rights in Detroit just 2 weeks ago and let them off the hook. So this time they didn't let them off the hook. They took care of business. And what's interesting, and I brought this up to somebody, and I think I brought it up on the overtime show of Cowboys and Eagles, is Justin Fields is playing really well. I don't think the Bears are going to draft a quarterback. Now, I could be wrong. Again, remember, the GM that drafted Justin Fields is no longer in Chicago. So there are no guarantees. But in this league, when you find yourself a quarterback and you feel good about that quarterback, you got to go with the known commodity versus the unknown commodity. It's too hard to find a quality quarterback in this league to just dump a guy because you think you found better. It's one thing when you've had a guy for a considerable amount of time, if you've seen everything you needed to see and you just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's different than, hey, I got a young quarterback and I think this guy can do some really big things. He just needs a little bit more time, and you just decide to move on from him. It's rare in the league to do that, especially if you think you're on to something. And I think the Bears may feel like they're on to something with Justin Fields. I was expecting him to come back from the injury. One, you would be, kind of mulling over keeping him just off of the strength of the injury concerns. He's been banged up each of the last 2 years. The second thing was I just didn't think he was going to play well. But he's played well. Had the come from behind victory versus Minnesota, albeit it was trash. Doesn't matter. He did that, right? They come off the bye week. They head home, and they beat Detroit after having Detroit on the ropes the first time, just like I said, 3 weeks ago. And he played really well, including, the hard count on 4th and 13 to draw Detroit offsides, and then throws a dart to DJ Moore. I thought he escaped the pocket, used his legs well, thought he threw the football very effectively. I still don't know if he's reading the field as well as I would like him to, but there's enough flashes there that if you're Chicago, and again, there's still 4 games left, so there's no guarantees as to what way they're leaning. But I'm just telling you, having watched him very closely, because a lot of what happens in the draft hinges upon what Chicago decides to do with number 1, whether they take a player, because it doesn't matter what happens. Unless Jaden Daniels, who just won the Heisman Trophy, unless he makes completes this meteoric rise, right? Because he's having a Joe Burrow-like ascension. But he's not Joe Burrow. But he's having a Burrow-like ascension. I talked to anybody before the start of this college football season. He was viewed as a 3rd-round pick. The same way Joe Burrow was viewed going into his final year at LSU. He was viewed as a 3rd-round pick. Jaden Daniels has ascended. He's won the Heisman Trophy just like Joe Burrow did. And right now he's positioned himself, I think, to be the number 2 quarterback taken. I think he might have leapfrogged over Drake May. We'll see. You know how the process goes. If you love him, you love him. If you don't, you don't. But he's done enough work. He's won enough awards and garnered enough accolades to put himself in that conversation to be the number 2 quarterback. The question is, can he ascend to number 1? I don't think he can. I don't think anyone can elevate over Caleb Williams. However, with that said, I think Caleb Williams is going to be the #1 overall pick, regardless of who's making the selection. So if Chicago's not making the pick, they're not going to stay at 1 to draft a tackle or a receiver or XYZ. If they don't draft Caleb Williams, they're going to move out so someone can. So, again, the question then becomes, who's coming up to get #1 if Chicago's not going to spend the #1 overall pick on a quarterback? It could be Washington. It could be the Giants. It could be the Patriots. It could be any number of teams. Lots of teams need a quarterback. It could be the Raiders, right? Anybody could come up. It just depends on how far the Bears are willing to move back. Last year, they didn't mind moving all the way back to 9 because they were getting DJ Moore, right? They still have a top 10 pick because of their record. So they could move as far back as wherever the Raiders end up being, which the Raiders are probably going to end up being somewhere in that 9 to 13 range when it's all said and done. They may not mind moving that far back, right? We'll see. But just wanted to throw that out there. Justin Fields is playing well. So that could alter the plans of a team like, say, Washington as to what they're going to do, because Williams might be the only guy they're willing to move on from Sam Howell. I've said this already. I don't want Caleb Williams because I don't think he's mature. And yes, he can grow up, but I still got PTSD from Robert Griffin III. So that's not my cup of tea. But if there was one quarterback in particular I'd be willing to move on from Sam for, it'd be Caleb Williams. I don't want to give up what it's going to take to get to #1. But if the next GM comes in here and decides this is what he wants to do, I'm on board, right? So at the end of the day, some interesting decisions have to be made. We'll talk about the tankathon and where Washington sits after everything is done in week number 14. We still have the Titans who have to play the Dolphins and the Giants who have to play the Packers. So it's still some pieces that could be shuffled around and this, that, and the third. So I kind of just want to wait until the entire week has met its conclusion. So we'll do it tomorrow here on the program. But in saying all of that, I got one question for you on this Victory Monday. I don't know if we'll actually have a real Victory Monday the rest of the season. So let's just take this one and enjoy it for what it's worth. All right. What is the biggest thing that you learned? What was your biggest takeaway from the week without Washington football? If you watched the games, maybe you just took an opportunity to just get away from football altogether. Like, hey, I don't have an obligation on Sunday. I can do other things. And maybe that's what you chose to do. Spend your time doing other things. Christmas shopping, spending time with family, vacationing, whatever, right? But if you're a junkie like me and you're just still consuming copious amounts of ball, even though your favorite team isn't playing, pause. Then what was your biggest takeaway? Someone hit me up yesterday and was like, their biggest takeaway was that watching that Eagles-Cowboys game, we're not even close. I didn't get that sense watching that game. We know we're not close right now, with the way the team is constructed and even more so coached. But remember, we took the Eagles, and again, I don't like talking about moral victories or taking and coming close. I don't like going the Bruce Allen route. But a play here, play there, a decision by Ronald Rivera to go for 2 could have been the difference between beating the Eagles in week 4. If the defense wasn't absolutely atrocious, we probably beat them in week 8. So at the end of the day, I don't feel like we're that far away. I just don't. Dallas stomped the mud hole in us, but by the time Dallas got to us, our spirit was broken. We were a different team by the time we saw Dallas. That wasn't the same Commanders team that the Eagles saw in weeks 4 or 8. Obviously, from a roster perspective, there was no Chase Young, there was no Montez Sweat. That's first and foremost. But taking it a step further, any hopes of making the playoffs had already been dashed once we lost to the Seahawks, and then the exclamation point was put on it when we lost to the Giants. So we were already defeated mentally. The season was done. Guys had already checked out. So they got the worst possible version of the Commanders. So that 40, and we hung in for 3 quarters. Even with that mentality going into the game, we hung in for 3 quarters before we let the rope go. So I don't think we're that far away, personally. But I've always said this, and I said it multiple times this year, and that'll continue to be the theme until they change the narrative. It's consistency. We can play with anybody in the league. We've proven that we can play with some of the best teams, right, and be competitive with them, which that's just about anybody in the league. You can be competitive, but can you win? And then can you do that again? And that's been our problem, is we'll play a hell of a ball game this week, and then the following week we'll lay an egg, right? And then the following week after that, we'll come back and we'll be hyper competitive. And then the week after that, we'll absolutely wet the bed. And then the week after that, we'll win. And then the week after that, we'll lose. And it's like, what are we doing here? You know, how do we find a way to be consistent? That's the biggest issue Washington has had, is consistency. That was the issue this year. It's been the issue in past years. It'll continue to be an issue until they solve it. Biggest takeaway from yesterday's action, leave it down in the comment section. Regarding this team, rather, like, you don't have to tell me, oh, the officiating sucks. That's cool. I don't care about that. I want to know, in regards to this team, what was your biggest takeaway? What did you learn watching other teams that you can apply to Washington, or you can say to yourself, damn, we need one of those, or damn, this is why I would take the receiver over the tackle, or damn, this is why I would take the tackle over the tight end or the receiver, or man, we could use one of those, or man, we are so far away, or damn, I was watching Detroit, I really love Ben Johnson, whatever the case may be. Leave it down in the comment section. Biggest takeaway from the Week 14 action with Washington on a bye week. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Tomorrow we'll be back. And then Wednesday we'll hit the ground running for the stretch run. Rams are up this week. They played a hell of a game but fell short in overtime to the Ravens. That looks like a nice ass whooping in the making. I was hoping that the Rams would continue to be inconsistent and lacking on the offensive end, because we can't stop anybody defensively. They've turned it up. Stafford is playing at a high level. They're getting all their guys involved now. Sean McVay is back in his bag. Oy vey. It could get ugly post-bye. But at least it won't be wet and nasty, and we'll be indoors and all of that good jazz. At least aesthetically, we'll watch a game that doesn't look like ass. But the product on the field may still look like ass. We'll see. Maybe the guys will be rejuvenated for the stretch run after this bye week. Maybe not. We'll see. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.